Welcome to this episode of Against the Mountains of Madness. I'm your host, Jason.
And I'm John C. Wright.
And on this episode, we're going to be talking about the problem of Gandalf. So, obviously we mean Gandalf is better in the more recent Lord of the Rings stories and the Rings of Power than anything that went before. No, of course not. The problem of Gandalf.
We're not discussing the Rings of Power tonight.
No.
What the problem with Gandalf is the problem that some Christian writers face who write fantasy and science fiction, who want to know how to portray supernatural or spooky powers in a fashion. We've all played Dungeons and Dragons. We've all read The Wizard of Oz. We live in a culture where good witches are routinely portrayed as good guys, even though our Christian religion strictly forbids magic of any form. You say?
Well, occultism is out, yeah.
Occultism is out, right. And so there's no such thing as a good witch for a Christian. So how can I, as a Catholic author, as a Christian author, write a book that has like a wise old man like Gandalf, who's clearly a wizard? He's got a staff and a long white beard, and he's clearly portrayed as a good guy. So that is basically the problem with Gandalf. And the additional problem is, what happens if you're Dumbledore? What happens if you're Harry Potter, where what's being portrayed is a magical art that someone can learn how to use, and will that tempt people to want to learn it? You see, why do you have Glinda the Good Witch of the South in The Wizard of Oz, when there's no such thing as good witches? Now, Glinda the Good famously says only bad witches are ugly, which assumes that good witches are pretty. And there was a TV show back in my youth called Charmed, which had three of the most attractive actresses in Hollywood on it, and they were clearly portrayed as good witches, as having superpowers that they were using for
being the heroes of the story,
being not just the protagonists but also the heroines rather than the villains. So there's three questions I have for you, and
sure,
you can have for me. One is, what's the appeal of the occult? The second is, how do we make is it licit to ever have a good witch or a good wizard in a story if you're a Christian? And the third is how do you, if the answer to your second question is yes, I want to have Merlin the magician in my stories about King Arthur, which I think I can tell as a Christian and a Catholic in a perfectly Christian way. If I want to talk about the Holy Grail, which is clearly the Eucharist, okay. If I want to talk about the Holy Grail, how do I do it so as not to present any danger? Or to minimize the danger if I can't eliminate it entirely. So that's basically the three questions: is what's the appeal? What can we ever do it? And if we do it, how do we do it prudently? If that makes sense.
Okay. Well, I think the first question is easy. What is the appeal? Well, witchcraft and the occult has the same appeal as politics and engineering, but is easier. But they give you mastery. They give you mastery over the physical world and give you power and control. So engineering is the very hard way to do that, where you build things and tame the natural world. If you're lazy, that's not going to work for you, because that takes lots of study and lots of money and lots of work. Politics will give you power and mastery over the world, but that's tricky and often only for the elites. But anybody can summon demons and get them to do your bidding, in theory.
Well, I agree in part and disagree in part.
Sure.
I agree in part and I disagree in part, and here's why I disagree in part. I think you're an engineer. I think you are giving wizards far too much credit, because I've read some of their for doing research for fantasy books. I've read real wizards, or people who purported to be wizards, and what they've written, in order to try to get a sense of verisimilitude for what they're doing. And it is not just power over nature they want. It is secret power over nature. These are guys who want to play the computer game of life with the cheat codes. And they want the cheat codes that other people don't have. The appeal of Gnosticism, the appeal of the occult, is an appeal that you know a secret knowledge that will save you, and that other people are less than you see. So I think an engineer or a politician, a statesman or a guy who's studied mathematics, is probably too successful to be really allured to the occult. Because I think they want to cheat. I think they want to get a quick and dirty way to get ahead. And if
So
prayers to God are not working, maybe they can turn to the darker powers and get real results. You know,
so what you're saying is occultism is engineering and politics for the lazy. I think that's
no, for the
fair.
failures, for the
Oh
spiritual
yes.
failures, for the people
Oh,
who
I
can't make it
even stronger.
otherwise.
I was being polite by saying
Well,
lazy.
but let me also say one other thing. Most of the witch burnings that took place in the ancient world, and the biggest, I should say, not just Christians hate witches. The biggest witch killing in history was done by the Romans in their pagan days, when a group of women had decided to poison all their husbands, and scores of men died poisoned by their wives, and hundreds and hundreds of witches were burned at once, burned alive. Okay, and that was all.
Mm.
That was all worshippers of Zeus and worshippers of Jupiter. That was not the Christians doing that. Okay.
Well,
Uh,
Well, Catholics at least historically don't do that to witches. I mean, when the Inquisition was at its height, despite all of the calumnious accusations, it was very unusual for the church to execute someone for witchcraft. It did happen. I won't say it didn't happen,
sure.
but there was the odd case of it. But generally speaking, most of what was termed witchcraft was if you're sick, you go to a priest and he anoints you with oil. He'll pray over you. He will do, for want of a better term, church magic to help you.
Like a cleric in D&D. We're both
Sure.
gonna have to go to confession after this. So
Well,
yeah,
I mean, I didn't mean it I just sort of meant it in a very technical sort of term. I wasn't
yeah.
suggesting it was occultish or anything.
It's a
But
reasonable
I
thing
mean,
to attempt. Sure. And
you're
there's also
you're
biblical. There's
well,
also
yeah, but you
biblical authority saying we should do that.
yeah, but the priest is doing something on your behalf and imploring God on your behalf, and then commoners would do this, and they weren't supposed to, and that was so. This sort of a lot of what the Inquisition dealt with witchcraft wise was people doing I'm going to keep quoting church magic because it's not really a good way to phrase it, but I don't
Why
have
don't
a
you
better
say why don't you say
term.
a rite or a ritual of the church, a sacrament?
Fair enough.
They were
Well,
desecrating a sacrament, is what was really
that's
happening.
true. But I mean, but generally speaking, they were doing it innocently.
Well, don't
They
be so quick. I know of cases where they would hold a funeral mass for someone who was alive, hoping that the spirit world would assume the guy was dead and then kill him.
Okay,
Okay?
that's true. But my understanding, at least, assuming I can trust, I think it was Father Robert Barron's one of the books on the topic. Just on general Catholicism. But essentially, it was like, well, they would basically tell the people off, send them to confession, maybe fine them, but
Yeah.
like just naughty, you're not supposed to do this, and sort of basically catechize them properly and set them straight. That was most of
But there's
how
also another group of
it went.
witches. There's another group of witches that, if you remember in the Didache, I don't know if you ever read it, but it's an
Yeah,
early
of
first
course.
century document
Hmm.
that's supposed to be the handbook of the early apostles.
Hmm.
And it forbids magic and abortions in the same sentence, because of
course.
course in the ancient language that was basically the same word, pharmakon, that you would use for both things. Well, a
Ah.
lot of the old witches in the Middle Ages, the old grannies from the villages, would use their folk remedies to try to abort babies, which was illegal under church law. You see.
Okay.
And so sometimes sometimes the victims would get poisoned, and I don't mean just the baby. Sometimes it would kill the mother too.
Yeah, of
You see.
course.
So the witches who lay curses on people were a thing in the Middle
Oh,
Ages. If you want to mean about old grannies who had no other means of support, and who were, or midwives who went around concocting brews to kill babies. I mean, not nice people. Keep in mind.
no,
Uh,
I
but
get it.
also
Not
what happened
everybody's
is,
innocent,
after the
but
Reformation, if I thought a witch was cursing me, I could not go to a priest and get anointed with oil, because the priest had been kicked out of England. Or, excuse me, the priest had been kicked out of England, but the
mm,
the rituals and rites of the Roman Catholic Church were stripped away,
yes,
and I couldn't trust.
reformed.
They were reformed away. So my only way to get rid of a witch was to kill her. See, because I couldn't just go get a blessing or get holy oil or something. See, so that was part of what led into the witch hysteria,
Well,
which might not have been
inter-
hysteria if these women were actually poisoning people.
well, interesting story about that. This is, I think, the most fascinating story. While in Salem, Massachusetts, they were busy pressing witches to death and all the rest of it.
Hmm.
Um, in sort of Protestant Massachusetts at the time, there's a story of the Inquisition in Mexico. 5 priests dragged a woman before the Inquisition who was accused of witchcraft. And because the Inquisition was always very meticulous, they kept meticulous notes, they were very procedure oriented.
Hmm.
Everything had to be done properly, everything had to be properly investigated. They're not as normally portrayed. Um, the outcome of the outcome of their witch trial, they let the woman go after questioning her, and they admonished the priest not to be so gullible in future.
Yep. Yep.
So like, it's not as normally portrayed. The Catholic Church had
No.
a very, I mean, they recognize witchcraft as wrong, and
Right.
they'll have no tolerance for actual occultism, but
Right.
they're
But
pretty.
even
I
but
mean,
even in the Middle Ages, even in the alleged Dark Ages, which in some ways are much more rational than our modern age, uh, the church held that unless the woman had committed a murder, unless she had committed a murder by means of the occult, she couldn't be executed for murder.
well, there you
They
go.
had to actually commit a crime
No,
to be brought up on charges. You know.
but I mean
Now
that's
desecrating a
yeah,
sacrament, that would be, they'd have to go to penance for that, and so on and so forth.
fair
So.
enough.
So
Anyway, we're off
it's more
topic.
than just being no. This is directly on topic. Part of the
Oh, fair
appeal
enough.
of the occult is if you're an old woman and you don't have your husband or your sons around, but you're wise enough to be able to concoct brews. You want to know the secrets of nature. You want to know the properties of plants and animals that other people don't know. You see, and if you want revenge, then you want to get someone. How can I say this? If I had an argument with another man of my age, let's say old and weak and a graybeard, so I'm not attacking someone young and strong, and he's really offended me, and I've really offended him, and we agree to go somewhere and face off against a duel. That's not the appeal of witchcraft. I could get hurt if I punch a guy in the nose. Or worse, I might go to punch him, and then he and I might fall into a discussion. I might find out that I'm in the wrong, in which case we'd shake hands and go out for a beer together or something, okay? That's
Mm,
what people who confront each other are like. But if I can hire an assassin who is an invisible, unseen spirit inhabiting Tabitha, my black cat, and I can send him out so that that guy gets sick, and no one knows it's me unless they find the voodoo doll, buried under my backyard.
mm,
I'm a coward as well as being an occultist. You see,
yeah.
so the appeal of the occult is threefold. One is pride, because I think that
Mm,
the burning urge is to know the secrets of the universe that other men don't know. I don't think it's the same as the scientist who just wants everyone to know the secrets. You see, it's related. Don't get me wrong. There's a desire to have mastery over nature, but using your mastery over nature to have mastery over other men is a clear component of. I mean, read some of their garbage, read some of their occultish books. They want to have control over the future. They want to know what's going to happen. They want to know that the stars have in store for them, so they can make adjustments properly. Second is a lot of it these days is just anti-Christianity. That didn't
yeah.
used to be the case. If Oedipus's parents went and consulted the oracle at Delphi and found out that he was going to grow up and kill his father, and marry his mother, that I don't think was necessarily prompted by a love of the occult. They just went to go talk to the oracle of Delphi because they wanted to know what the gods had in store, what the gods had planned. It
Yep.
doesn't work out that well for them. Okay, that's slightly different than when Jonah goes to Nineveh, the Berlin of the Bronze Age, the most horrible city in the entire planet at the time, and warns
Mm,
them that God is going to smite them. And then he gets his bag of popcorn and he sits under his gourd and he's going to eat it while the Nineveh gets smitten. And it doesn't happen. Okay, do you understand the difference between the two prophecies?
yeah.
God spares the Ninevites because they repented. They poured sackcloth and ashes on themselves. They dressed in sackcloth and poured ashes on themselves. Uh, Oedipus doesn't repent. I mean, I wish he did. I wish he had gone to the Oracle of Delphi and it said, "You're going to kill your father and marry your mother." and he had said, "I vow never to kill another human being, no matter what, and I will remain chaste and abstinent. I will not get married my whole life." He would have thwarted the will of the gods in that case. So there is a difference, I think, between honest paganism, which is wrong. It's still in the darkness of ignorance, but it's the darkness before the dawn. It's not
Mm,
deliberately turning your back on the sun and going into a cave to escape it, because you're like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, who hates the sunlight, my precious. You see, the allure of the occult is always the one ring of the Lord of the Rings, if I may extend my
mm,
metaphor, which is the desire to A, be invisible to your fellow man so you escape all consequences. Thank you, Ring of Gyges. And B, to have power over their wills, to have
mm.
power over them. So the other question then is, well, excuse me, is there anything else to say about the appeal of the occult?
Um, no, I think that's it. And obviously, the danger is there are entities listening who will happily indulge your requests.
Yep. "I can call up spirits from the vasty deep," says Owen Glendower in a famous Shakespeare play. And he's answered, "Aye, so can I, and so can any man. Will they come when they call?" Now, that's a really witty answer, thank Mr. Shakespeare. But the problem is not will they come. The problem is, how do you put them down again? How do you get them to go
Mm.
away after you've made your deal with them? Okay.
Yeah.
The very first deal with the devil story on record that the history has preserved for us actually comes from the 3rd century. Okay. So the
Oh,
deal with the devil stories go way back. And it was, of all things, a bishop who wanted to be elected archbishop in Asia Minor during the Byzantine Empire, and he didn't get the vote. So he went into a graveyard and made it and wrote up a contract in blood. And that element, the contract written in blood, that comes from way back, according to the
okay.
original story. Okay, a young man walks up and agrees to grant him his wish in return for his soul. Okay, so they shake hands on the bargain. And he becomes archbishop. Then he repents it. Then he regrets it, and he doesn't want to go to hell. So he prays to the Virgin Mary. Now, spoilers. This ending actually surprised me. The ending of the story was the Virgin answered his prayer and sent a vision from heaven. She walks up to him. The little girl, the little Jewish girl, walks up to him wearing the crown of stars. She's the Queen of Heaven, and she says, "Show me the contract." And she rips it up. And she says, "You don't have the authority to make that contract. You don't own your own soul. God owns your soul."
Mm,
And the guy doesn't go to hell. He has to give up his archbishopric. He has to undo all the other evils he's done. But the very first ever deal with the devil story that exists in record is one with a happy ending, where if you repent, that God will just tear up the contract. Now, in Faust, at least the Christopher Marlowe version of Faust, Christopher Marlowe was a contemporary of Shakespeare.
mhm.
No, he gets dragged down to hell. He goes screaming into the abyss, wishing that Christ's blood could save him, but he doesn't repent. He doesn't actually call on Christ to save him. He just wishes he could.
Well, yeah.
So yeah. So it's a lot like Dr. Facilier in the end of Disney's Princess and the Frog. One of my favorite portrayals of the occult. He sings this nice little song about having friends on the other side, and his friends call in their debts, and that's what you get. Now, I like having things like that in children's stories better than I like having Glinda the Good Witch, though I'm a big fan of Glinda the Good Witch, because at least it warns you what you're getting into if you don't know what you're dealing with. You
Mm,
see, I have a friend now, and I should mention the reason why I believe that this is actually a real question that Christian authors have to deal with, have to think about, and Christian parents have to think about what books to buy for their kids is uh, when people criticize Lord of the Rings, or they criticize the Narnia books, or they criticize Harry Potter for being a gateway drug to occultism. I think that's kind of silly, because everyone knows those are make believe, and those people were mostly religious. So two of them were really religious. One of them was the most famous apologist of the 20th century, and even
mm,
Harry Potter, though she did not say it openly. There's Christian themes running through that, especially at the end where he sees a Bible quote written on a headstone, and she's trying to follow in the footsteps of that mythos of the Christian story. But I also knew a guy from college, one of my friends from college, who got involved in the occult because of Dungeons and Dragons, because of Lord of the Rings. The appeal to him of a world beyond the material world was too strong of an allure. And he didn't like Christianity, I assume, because of his father. I mean, we never talked about it to any length. I mean, I knew the guy. And he was my roommate for a while. I knew the guy and loved the guy. I don't think he's got an evil bone in his body. But the allure of knowing secrets other men didn't know, the allure of looking down your nose at your fellow man was there. I shared it myself as an atheist, because atheists always think they're smarter than other people.
Yeah.
Because atheists think they're seeing through an illusion that deceives everyone else. Well, so is the occultist. The occultist thinks he knows the real world. You see? And after I became Christian, I tried to warn my friend in a friendly fashion, and I said, "Look, you don't know what you're dealing with. You're sticking a fork in a light socket. You don't know whether the power's on or not. You don't know what's going to answer you."
Yeah.
And he thought, as a witch who had studied the occult very deeply, more deeply than anyone else I've ever known, he thought he could control it. He thought he knew what was going on. He thought that there was a energy field that surrounded the universe, like sort of like the Force in Star Wars, and that whatever god you yourself picked, the energy would form into that god, and it would the god force would like wear a mask and would be required to behave according to the archetypes and ideas of how that god behaved.
That's
And
what
I
they
was
want you
like,
to think.
wow, really? Really, dude? You think the unknown world is just something you can turn off and on like a light switch, huh? Well, it struck me as being remarkably naive and remarkably foolish. I'm reminded of the guys from the movie Independence Day who are waving at the spaceship and saying, "Come down and talk to us, alien creatures." Okay, I'm sorry. These unseen spirits, they're more alien than any creature from outer space, because the outer space people are at least made of matter. They're at least living creatures from Mars or something. You don't know what these things are up to. You don't know what they want. And the people who do know have warned you that they're hostile.
Warned you that they're dangerous and smarter than you.
They're dangerous, they're smarter than you, and you can't control them. Now, if you want to bow down and serve them, then pick a good guy to bow down and serve. Someone who's in favor of life, light, and happiness. Okay? But if you're proud, if you want to know the secrets other men don't know, then you're not gonna worship any god that's actually a good god. So that's the problem. So that I guess that brings up what the second question is I want to write stories that have characters like Merlin the magician in it. Okay, I've written a story with Merlin the magician in it. In fact, it was I can't remember the name of the book I wrote, but he's in there somewhere. Guardians of Everness. Pardon me, it was my Everness series. Now I made Merlin in my book somewhat of a creepy character, somewhat of a spooky character, because he's a magician. He deals with dark powers. Okay, fine. But I also don't want, as a Christian, I don't want to have people admire Merlin's learning and say, "Oh, I want to learn what he knows how to do. I want to learn the spell that he learns, and also fall in love with Nimue, and I want to end up half dead under a tree root somewhere buried in England, trapped in a crystal cave," or whatever happens to Merlin. He doesn't have a good end. He doesn't come to a good end.
Yep.
I don't want to glamorize. I'm in the same position. If I'm a Christian writing a fantasy story, I'm in the same position as a murder mystery writer who doesn't want to tell people how to commit a murder, and I don't want to glamorize the criminal. If anything, I want to glamorize the cop, right? So, is it possible? Is there a way that I can write a Wizard of Oz book and have Glinda the Good be a character and have her be nice and gentle and kind and sweet when she's clearly a witch? She's a good witch of the South.
Clearly an occultist. Well, I suppose.
But she's not really an occultist. She's Ozma herself Ozma of Oz is a fairy, and fairies are naturally magical. Now, is that okay? Fairies don't sit there with books and learn their magic. They are magical.
I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, if you look at Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings, there's no way to go to school to be Gandalf. I can't be Gandalf. I can't learn to be Gandalf or Sauron before he turned, I suppose. These are not techniques, but this is the danger of Harry Potter. They're at a school learning to be wizards.
Right.
But I suppose
the beautiful actresses on Charmed had a Book of Shadows, and they had other obvious occult based props in the shots. They were clearly supposed to be modern witches with upside down stars and the whole 9 yards. Harry Potter is actually supposed to be Tom Brown's School Days, but just a secret world where there's magic. I mean, the fake Latin spells he learns, like Flippicus, Shutupicus, or whatever. It's not
Yes.
abracadabra. I'm sorry, that's not real occultism. That's not even meant to. It doesn't look like real occultism. It looks like Halloween. It looks like the
I
wizards and witches from riding broomsticks and pointing magic wands.
I suppose the question is that not possibly more dangerous because there is real magic, occultism is really dangerous, and this makes it look comical and ridiculous. This is like, I mean,
Well,
are you sure Harry Potter isn't the equivalent of the devil in a red jumpsuit with horns and a pitchfork?
that's an excellent question, and I
It's a
don't have the
ridiculous
answer.
because it's ridiculous, which makes it makes him not dangerous. Did you? Oh, I'm guessing you didn't watch any of the TV show Lucifer.
No, no.
It's in. It's. I watched a bit of it. It's kind of interesting because it's pretty obviously not a Christian world.
Hmm.
So there's a distinction. I'm not advocating for watching it, but I guess Lucifer is portrayed somewhat sympathetically, but he's also portrayed as the ruler of hell, not the
Not the prisoner in hell.
yes, not its principal damned entity.
Right, right.
Um, but he's sort of portrayed. Well,
Well, what did they
he's
do?
kind of a degenerate. I mean, he's not a good. He's not, but
What
he's
did
not.
what did they do to make it seem Lucifer not seem like the good guy, not glamorize him? Or did they glamorize him? I haven't seen the show. I have no interest in the show. And
He's
I have no
kind of
interest
a
in the show because if he was portrayed as a guy in a red jumpsuit with a pitchfork, if he was portrayed like the devil is in Angel on My Shoulder, played by Claude Rains, I'd go watch that because for one thing, the devil loses in that story. Okay?
no. He's portrayed more. It's it's a more pagan take on or
Yeah.
Manichaean take on good versus evil, I suppose.
Yeah.
And but he's portrayed as sort of suave and sophisticated, but he has orgies and he's kind of a degenerate, and he's not a it's
Well, let me ask you this.
it's sort of made it interesting.
Have you read good old Milton's Paradise Lost? It's one of my favorite books.
Not recently. I think I have at one point, but I don't particularly remember it.
Do you remember the way the devil's portrayed there? Because even
Just remind us for anyone that hasn't.
he's portrayed like a pagan hero with all of the virtues of being trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, and so on and so forth. He's not, excuse me, not courteous or kind. What am I saying? He's bold. He's brave. He's like Achilles. Okay.
Yeah.
He's portrayed as being a great man and a leader. He makes wonderful speeches in front of his gathered demons. He's proud as Lucifer. He dresses in adamantium and gold armor when he's out to defy God. He never bends or yields. And he's portrayed as just like this heroic figure, okay, except for one small thing. He's completely wretched because when he's not in front of his men and talking just to himself, he confesses that the service in heaven wasn't hard and that he's miserable, and his only profitable thing he can do in his misery is to try and ruin things for mankind. Okay, now certain shallow poets who come later, Blake, thought that Milton was of the devil's party without realizing it. And I just thought that Blake was just not a very insightful reader. If you think the devil's the hero of that story, you are not reading what Milton is doing. What Milton is doing is he's mocking the entirety of the Homeric genre by saying all of these pagan virtues are of no good if you don't have faith in God. All they will do is shoot you in the foot. If you're courageous enough to swim across the sea of chaos in order to make it to the new world, and cunning enough to outsmart Gabriel and do the other things that the devil does in that story, all you can do is double the damnation on yourself, and you end up at the end of the story being turned into a snake once a year. Okay, so has Milton ever inspired anyone to study the occult? That I don't know, but there's a character in Kipling who quotes Lucifer as saying it's better to reign in hell than than serve in heaven. He appeals to the pride in all of us. We all have a little devil in us, you say.
Well,
So I would not get rid of Milton for the world. It's like I said, it's one of my favorite books. And if you think that it's glamorizing anything, that's just on you. Now, my friend, who I actually was worried about, did read Lord of the Rings when he was young, and it did open his eyes to the idea that there was a world beyond the material world, and that the controlled bourgeoisie world of his parents, who were Freemasons, but just by the way, they were occultists themselves. Freemasonry is
Yeah.
not a healthy pastime. Uh, was too small for him. He wanted the large order. He wanted to see the mysteries. Okay, but he thought they were dark. He wasn't willing to believe in God. That would be too humiliating to him. He'd be too small in the larger universe if there was a God. He's willing to believe in every other god. He's willing to believe in Thor. He's willing to believe in Anubis. He's willing to believe in Zeus. He's willing to believe in all the earth goddesses. All the bloody earth goddesses who drink human blood. That's all fine with him. But Christ, no, that's a step too far. He believes in every god but God. But
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not willing to take that away from him if I was given the chance. If I was the emperor of the world, I would not ban fantasy stories. Because at the same time, and of the same age, and in the same school, I met a young lady whose faith in Christ was rock solid and was based on her love of the Narnia books that she read when she was a child. Okay? Now, I was an atheist at the time, and to me, I looked down her nose at her for having a children's story, be something her faith was based in. But C.S. Lewis is a remarkably subtle and deep writer. I don't know if he's as deep as Tolkien. That's an issue for another day. But he's able to put across very complicated theological ideas in a really simple way, such as by having Aslan say, "To me, all times are soon," or have him say, "I'm not going to tell you any other story but your own." You see? And by merely dressing up Aslan in another disguise, you can see how remarkable and shocking a character he actually is. So people who say, "Well, there's magicians in Narnia," I go, "Well, yes and no. It's not like Harry Potter. It's not like a thing where you can sit and
Can't
learn.
learn it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a fallen star who was kicked out of heaven and has to spend some time on Earth as a punishment. And there's a scene where Lucy opens up a magic book and does cast a spell, but she casts the spell to eavesdrop on some of her friends. And Aslan shows up and says, "You're just snooping. Whether you did that with a magic spell, or you did it with an electronic device, or you did it by listening at a door eavesdropping by a window, that's the same. The occultic impulse is the desire to break the laws. That's what's basically earlier in the conversation. That's why I wanted to say that's the difference between that and they want the cheat codes. They don't just want to be engineers. You see?
Yeah.
Now there are books, Masterify Magic by Lindsay Haney. There are books, and in D&D where the magic is just engineering. You have certain spells that cost you certain points. You have to use certain material components, and you get an effect. And it's no different from having a gun with 6 different bullets, an ice bullet and a flame bullet and a lightning bullet. And you whip out your wand of wonder and you just shoot it, okay? In D&D, magic is technology.
As I saw the other day, I can cast Fireball. Just get me a trebuchet, some C4, and a remote detonator.
There we go. I'll knock down that wall for you, sire. That's the Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. He's not actually a magician, but he does make Merlin look like a fool in that story.
I have seen, just speaking of, technology, there was another meme where it had the guy with the minigun from Predator, and it was the American student enters the battle for Hogwarts. So
now, if you want to believe in magic, the magic that the guy could carry a Vulcan autocannon just with a hip sling is pretty impressive anyway. So, now, but there's a question there. If the magic is merely just an alternate technology, this world is a parallel timeline. It's not our world. Newton, instead of discovering the laws of gravity, discovered the laws of sympathy and contagion. And then you have like the Sir Darcy stories of I forget who wrote them. Does that tempt anyone toward the occult? I don't think it does.
I don't know. I mean,
because my friend didn't want to be a D&D magician. He didn't want to cast fireballs. He wanted to, quite honestly enough, he was still a good-natured guy. He wanted to cure the sick. He wanted to cure an old lady who was sick. So he prayed his voodoo prayer for her, and it worked. And I'm sure the devil will grant certain numbers of healings to people who do these native health rituals for a while, long enough to. The worm on the hook is still a real worm and is actually nutritious. It's just that there's an iron hook in there. So don't eat the free cheese, Mickey. There's something suspicious about it laying out here in the middle of the kitchen. So
it's not that it doesn't work. That's the problem.
Right. It's not that it doesn't work, and it doesn't work once or twice is not the problem.
If it didn't work, it wouldn't be an issue. It wouldn't be warned against it. It wouldn't be warned against in the Bible if it didn't work.
I'm not sure. There might be just a warning against foolishness, but I think it's safer for Christians. I've known Christians who didn't believe in the supernatural. They didn't believe in ghosts and they didn't believe in magic. And that strikes me as an ex-atheist, that strikes me as being very odd indeed. Because
Did they believe in demons? Were they? I mean,
I think they didn't. You can sometimes come across C.S. Lewis arguing with his fellow Christians about whether or not the devil is real. Like maybe these guys were deists or something, like Thomas Jefferson, who thought there was a good God but no opposing forces. I don't know. I don't
I
know.
suppose you've got to ask the question: at what point are they even Christians? At that point, I mean,
Well,
I'm
you
I'm
have
I'm
to at
loath I'm
least
loath to say it,
you have
but
to at
like,
least believe in the miracle of the resurrection to be a
yeah,
Christian. Okay. Now, I don't know how you get around not believing the Bible or not believing that the Witch of Endor actually summoned up the ghost of Samuel the prophet to talk to Saul. Especially since the witch herself in that scene is shocked when she finds out who Saul is, because he's a guy who made witchcraft illegal. Okay?
she wasn't expecting it to work like that.
So, while I admit it's possible that God forbade the worship of idols because the idols were all fake, I prefer to play it safe and to think that there are spiritual powers that are invisible, diabolical spiritual powers that are continuously at war with the powers of good in this world, and that some of them will answer their calls if you pray to Mumbo Jumbo God of the Congo. Okay? Why take the risk?
Well, that seems
Okay?
more likely too. I mean, it seems more likely that the reason there's a warning against it is there's something to be
Yeah.
warned against.
Yeah. And
So,
I don't see how you could not believe in the devil when Christ himself says he saw the devil fall like a star from the heavens. Okay? In the book of Job, now maybe the book of Job is just meant to be a metaphor, but it says that the the sons of God were all gathered together up in the council chambers in the tabernacles in heaven. As an ex-atheist, I prefer to believe in the Bible and in the teachings of the Catholic Church rather than assuming that there's no such thing as magic and therefore it's safe. Because why would you be interested in it then if you just thought it was crack pottery? You see. And it, like I said, it doesn't say Baal doesn't exist. It just says he doesn't answer. He's not reliable. He doesn't answer your prayers, and to worship him demeans you, damns you. You choose death if you choose one of these rebellious spirits rather than the true Father in heaven. Now, since that's also true philosophically and everything else in life, where if you put a lesser good above a greater good, you get a bad. You know,
yeah.
When I was young, I read a classical mythology about Apollo and Zeus and so on and so forth, and saw the opera with Odin and Siegfried and so on. I like those
Mhm.
pagan stories. I enjoy the pagan stories. I write some of them myself. But the pagan gods are not God. They're not actually good gods because Zeus
No.
is an adulterer and Aphrodite is a harlot. Okay, I mean not to put too maybe harlot's a harsh word. She sleeps around outside of marriage. Okay, and Zeus is a parricide. Zeus killed his own dad. So they're kinslayers, terrible people. And in Homer's Iliad, Ares is portrayed as a coward. Now, if you're a pagan, what attracts you to those gods? I mean, why do you want to get in touch with them and the Green Man and the Earth Goddess who drinks blood? Well, power,
They give you power, yeah.
right? Now, so if you're portraying it in a story and you're portraying Dr. Facilier from the Princess and the Frog by Disney, or you're portraying Faustus from this Christopher Marlowe version, and the end of the story is they get dragged down to hell, I think that's perfectly cromulent. I don't think that's going to allure anyone who is uh, I think it's not on you as the author if your roommate finds that really attractive and wants
If you portray it as a bad idea, then
or even portray it as like a drug addiction, like it's a good idea but it will lead you astray. You see?
that seems like a bad idea.
Yeah, yeah. Now I have to say I did not like the way Willow the Witch was portrayed in Joss Whedon's Angel and Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh
Because
yes.
she was portrayed as a good witch who had an occult art that allowed her to do things. And there was a story arc where she started to abuse it, but in that, it was very clearly an abuse of a technology. The fact that in that world there were actual demons was never condemned. The angels in heaven were referred to merely as the powers that be, which is rather blasphemous if you think about it. They never interfered for the good. They don't come on stage. Buffy does die and comes back from heaven, and she's sad because heaven was so nice. But it's not the Christian worldview. It's like most horror stories. Horror stories usually take place in a world where there's demons and vampires, but no good guys. The cross usually drives the vampire back, however. So the Catholics, oddly enough, in vampire stories, the Catholics are good guys more so than Protestants are. Don't ask me why that is. No, excuse me. I know the reason why. It's because when the original vampire book was written, the Catholics were regarded as something that was foreign and creepy. It was spooky and occultic to have a crucifix actually work, because it was written by an Englishman.
Well, I was going to say, when the child starts levitating off the bed and the head turns around, you don't call a pastor with the skinny jeans. You call a Catholic priest.
Yes. So if anything, books like The Exorcist are actually the opposite. They actually portray the occult in all of its true grisly horror and make the Catholic priests into the good guys. So that's another way of doing it. But there's certain things you can do in a story to make the occult seem less appealing. One is to have Gandalf not be a human. I myself actually don't have a problem with Zatanna of DC Comics. Do you know why? She's not a human being. She's a member of a perilous species that exists in secret called Homo Magus. That's different from Homo sapiens. And they have magic powers that run through their body, like the ki energy from Naruto or something. And they can do spectacular effects by talking backwards and so on and so forth. Now,
but you can't learn that.
But maybe she does. I don't know. She has spell books, so she does.
But I suppose in Harry Potter you have to be born a wizard.
Oh, that's true. But is that like being born? Is that like being born with magical talent, or is that like being born to a special race? Because in Harry Potter, it's clearly you can clearly have half human, half Muggle crossbreeds. One of the main characters is a mudblood, as we call them.
Well, yes. No, but I mean, I suppose in Harry Potter, I don't know the Harry Potter lore well enough to answer the question. Can two Muggles produce a wizard?
I can't answer that off the top of my head. But I do know that Hermione is half human, half wizard. You see, but I don't know if they're a special race. It's certainly not the same as. Well, excuse me. In some of the stories, Merlin the magician from King Arthur is the son of the devil and a human woman. He's a demigod like Hercules is or something. See?
I just had a thought.
And Nimue is a fairy. Morgan Le Fay, as her name implies, is a fairy, is a fae, is from the Fey world, from the other world. So I don't know. But if I was interested in the occult, my friend would not be deterred by the fact that Gandalf is not a human being. He would say, "Well, I want to learn what he knows anyway." Because that's what the allure is. So I would not recommend getting rid of Lord of the Rings, but I might recommend getting rid of Charmed, because that just glamorizes occultism. Or The Craft. There was a movie a few years back called The Craft,
which they did a TV series of, which I think bombed abysmally recently.
What about the
unlike
X-Men?
Bewitched?
Well, here's one thing about Bewitched. I would not get rid of Bewitched or I Dream a Genie. Here's why. In Bewitched, the whole point of the story. Now, witches are a separate race from human beings. She's actually a fairy, like the fairy godmother in Cinderella. Okay, but she wants to give it up to become human, to become immortal, and to live like a housewife, because she knows something. She knows something that we have all forgotten. She knows something that we have all forgotten, which is life in an American suburb in the 50s and 60s was actually the best you could hope for on this earth. Okay, low crime, not at war, a burgeoning economy. And all you have to do is worry about Kravitz, the nosy neighbor, finding out that you're a witch. But in that story, the magic always caused the problem, and she usually had to use some cleverness, maybe use some magic to solve it again. But it was it was actually a story about how the in-laws in any marriage sometimes cause problems. It was a mother-in-law joke kind of story.
Is it a prequel to Harry Potter?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it is a sequel to I Married a Witch, which was a
Eh,
movie that was done at the time. Uh, Starring the actress that was also in Vertigo by Hitchcock, and I can't bring her name to mind. But
it's all good.
there in that movie, I Married a Witch. No, excuse me, Bell Book and Candle was the name of the movie. I Married a Witch was also a movie in the same shtick, where the girl wanted to use witchcraft to help her husband get elected, but he didn't want her to use witchcraft. Now, in none of those movies, witchcraft is just treated comically. It's not treated like it's actually an occult force or it's actually dangerous. And the witches are never actually seen portrayed as, making deals with devils or so on and so
Mm.
forth. They just have this spooky power. In Bell Book and Candle, the girl also wants to give up witchcraft, but it's also because the witch society there was living in secret among the mortals men, and they were treated like hippies, like beatniks. It was treated like a beatnik culture. If you see what I'm saying, it was
Yep.
treated like an American subculture that was kind of in hiding and trying to hide their strange little kinks and stuff. So it's actually a commentary on that. In the same way, the Crucible was a commentary, in my opinion, a foolish one on the Red Scare, which I don't know why they don't call the World War II the Nazi scare. It's not a scare if the Reds are actually out to get you.
If they're actually there, yeah.
Yeah, if everything McCarthyism is a term of use now that just means someone who makes a false accusation, and we even use the phrase witch trial to refer to a trial where the person can't possibly be guilty because the thing they're accused of can't possibly exist. But in fact, everything that McCarthy said turned out to be true. Historians
True,
have proved
yeah.
it now. So
There
so
were
you and I
Reds
are
under the
saying
bed.
maybe we should re-examine the idea of a witch hunt because, of course, there are real witches. I know a guy. I know a friend of mine. He runs a coven. He's a witch. Now, I did explain to him why I think he should join my religion rather than me join his because I told him our magic is stronger than your magic. I've seen more legitimate accounts of Christian miracles than I have of witchcraft spells working. Okay.
Mm.
And their magic gets driven off by our magic. We can hold up a cross or ring a church bell, and that decks them. They're done for.
Well,
Now, one thing I did in one of my stories is, and I wrote this back when I was an atheist, and I didn't believe in witchcraft, and I didn't believe in Christian magic, in Christian rites and rituals, or Christian sacraments.
you can call it
Uh,
magic. It's okay. I
I
don't think it's a problem.
portrayed a witch boy, an occultist from the realms of chaos, as being afraid of the Christians because their powers could drive back his friends. And he described it as it being like dealing with the mafia. They'll keep their deals most of the time, but if they get nervous, they'll off you because they don't want to run into the law. Okay? And I never say what the law
Ah.
is, but it's obvious what I'm talking about, okay?
Mm.
It's like the scene. There's a parallel scene in Disney's Pinocchio, where Honest John, the talking fox, is making a deal with this evil coachman who is dragging children off to Pleasure Island so they can be turned into donkeys. If you want to talk about how to portray the occult in a story in a way that will persuade people not to be curious about it, then show them Pinocchio of all things. Because there, the misbehavior of the children turns them into jackasses because they make jackasses out of themselves. But the thing I've always liked, it was always been very near and dear to my heart, is that Honest John is afraid of the law. He doesn't want to make a deal with the coachman, who's obviously the devil, okay,
Mm.
to kidnap the kids because he's afraid that he'll get caught. That's what if you portray magic like that, that's not like
Mm.
D&D. In D&D, it's a technology. In Harry Potter,
Yeah.
it's something you can learn, and maybe people would
Mm.
like to learn it, but Hogwarts is basically Tom Brown's school days. It's basically a boarding school like Eton, okay? Uh, to the American reader, that's the strange occult thing, not the witch. That's the part that seems strange and unusual.
Mm.
Why? What's a head boy? How come they have house points? So, uh, there's several ways to portray it so it's not glamorous. One is to say it's not a human being. I don't think anyone's ever read about the Cinderella and said, "Well, the fairy godmother, I want to have her powers. I want to be able to turn a pumpkin into a coach." Okay, I'm sorry,
There's,
that's
there's
ridiculous.
there's no expectation to be able to do it. That's true.
No, and she's a godmother. She's a Catholic mother who's supposed to take care of your kid when it's just she happens to have a fairy. It's just a Tanya or something. Okay, fine. The way the magic is portrayed in Midsummer Night's Dream, or the way the witches are portrayed in Macbeth. There, the witches are clearly a malevolent force. They tempt the guy to committing murder and regicide. Okay,
Well, they're the bad guys.
they're the
Well,
bad guys.
I guess the upshot is if you want to portray it, you need to portray it as
What about the Tempest?
expensive.
What about the Tempest? In the Tempest, the guy has magical books, and he commands the spirits of the air, including Ariel. Now, at the end of the story, he breaks his staff and drowns his books because he knows the study of witchcraft is unlawful. But he's not the bad guy in that story.
But he repents at the end. I mean,
He-
isn't the story? I mean,
He
it does,
gives it up because he wants to rejoin civilization. So he's sort of like Samantha. He wants to get back to Italy and live in a suburb with his daughter and a guy worthy of her. And he uses his magic to play tricks on people and to befuddle them. But I'm not willing to give up. I'm not willing to give up Shakespeare because my fellow Christians are a little worried about portraying magicians in stories.
But I don't think. But I mean, in that case, he's portrayed as seeing the error of his ways. Like he walks away from it in the end, doesn't he?
He walks away from it, but he also says it's like waking up from a dream. It's also kind of Shakespeare's farewell to his audience, because I think that was the last play he ever penned. You see, and because it's Shakespeare, there's levels of deep interpretation.
Yeah.
But I it's not he's not dragged down like Faust in the end of Marlowe.
Well, no, but the story you
But
told
he also does.
earlier-
But he breaks his staff and drowns his books. He says he's going to do it. Now he's also portrayed as a guy who lives on an island in isolation, as a hermit away from human civilization. As he's as much an exile as Grendel in Beowulf is exiled from human society. He's an outsider. He's a freak basically. And the only thing that saves him is his daughter Miranda is lovely and human. Okay. And so when he rejoins human civilization, he does have to give up his occult studies, which are portrayed as being obsessive, and it's kind of what got him in exile in the first place. But I don't know if Shakespeare ever actually says it's bad. I don't know if he actually says it's unlawful, it's unchristian, even though clearly in Shakespeare's day it was, and everyone in the audience knew it. No, because that was in the air. Everyone, I mean, it would be like portraying a handsome thief in any modern story. Everyone knows that thieving is bad, but if you're going to portray a heist film where your protagonists are all crooks and they give the money back at the end, or it gets burned up by mistake or something, we all know what's going on. You're actually kind of portraying an anti-hero.
No, but that's it. Like he's not. It sounds like he's not. He turns from his wicked ways, and everyone would have understood these were not lawful practice. These were not godly lawful practices.
I don't know if you ever saw Bedknobs and Broomsticks. There was also a Disney movie. It was not as
probably as a kid, but
it was not as famous as Mary Poppins, but it was in the same genre.
Yeah.
And I've read both Mary Poppins books and seen the movie and these books. And in those, the magic always goes away at the end of the story. Either Mary flies off into the sky because she's basically a fairy. It doesn't say she's a witch. I don't think she is actually, but she's a mysterious being who has mysterious powers. And only the children can see him. Just by the way, no one ever actually in the book. No one ever actually sees anything untoward or odd, except for the kids. And in Bedknobs and Broomsticks, the witch at the end of the story says, "I have to give up my magic." And the kids go, "You mean like for Lent, for a while?" And she says, "No, for good." It's never explained, but she clearly has to give it up because she wants to return to the church. She wants to return to civilization. You see. Now, again, also in Lloyd Alexander's Prydain series, at the end, all the fairy creatures, all the magical beings, Gwydion and his family, have to leave the mortal world and go back to the summer country where it's always pleasant, where it's always summer, because Aran, the devil, has been defeated. Okay? And the main character has to decide whether to stay on Earth and give up his magic. Elanwe also. Elanwe is a witch. She's a good witch. She has a magic glowing crystal ball that lights up when you love someone. Spoilers. It's one of my favorite little bits in that story is when Taran gets his hands on the bauble of Elanwe and has to try to figure out how it works. It doesn't have an on switch, and it's actually something that has a spiritual component to it. He has to
Hmm.
actually become enlightened spiritually in order to make the thing light up. I thought it was a great scene.
Okay.
She has to decide whether to give up her magic and long life and her elvish life, and stay with the human and live and die as a human woman. Which, by the way, is the same choice that's offered to Samantha from Bewitched. So,
Hmm.
if the magic is always portrayed as something that has to go away once it's done its job, does that kind of not glamorize it for you? As if magic is okay to fight Aron the Death Lord, or to fight the Cauldron Born. You can use magic, you can use Gandalf's magic ring to stop a Nazgul. But once the Nazgul is dead, you have to leave. You have to go over the ocean and go into the afterlife.
Hmm.
Well, sorry, the spoilers. The elvish heaven in Tolkien is pretty clearly an image of the afterlife, of
Yeah.
purgatory and heaven. So, if the magic dies, if the magic's going to go away, it's not as glamorous, is it? Because then it's
Hmm.
clearly something like a dream or like a childhood where you grow up and things don't seem as glamorous as they used to. You say you don't see the fairies in the garden anymore because you're too old.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I don't want to do as an author, and I don't think Christians should do, is take away magic in that sense of the word. Not in the occult sense of the word, but in the sense of when you wake up before dawn and you see the sunlight hit the dewdrops on the roses and the blades of grass in the garden, and it's all hushed and the light's not really bright yet. Or you're a father and you've just held your eldest baby in your arms, and there's a new life in the world. There are things that are really magical. There are times
Yeah.
when people have prayed and the sick have gotten better. There are miracles.
Yeah, of course.
And magic in stories is just a disguised way of talking about a miracle. Okay?
Hmm.
Aslan is not really a talking lion. It's a disguised way of putting Christ on stage so that you will look at him with fresh eyes, you see? And so magic is kind of like, if you treat it correctly, it's kind of like a thought experiment of going, well, what if you, mortal man, had the powers like an angel does or like a fairy does, and your wish could bend reality around you? What would that say about your character? Well, if you're Frodo and you have infinite power because you have the ring of power, it says a lot about your character that you're willing to go into the land of death to get rid of it rather than have it corrupt the world. But it says more about Sam, who's really the hero of that particular story. Spoilers. Sorry, I didn't mean to spoil the surprise ending, but Sam is really like the workaday farmer, the gardener. Turns out to be the greatest guy in that whole book, in my opinion. I'm sorry. You can take your kings and your wizards and so on. Give me the gardener. He's a great guy. Ends up as mayor. Has lots of kids. He ends up married to his girlfriend, Rose Cotton. Great story. So, my fellow Christians, we can't get rid of Lord of the Rings. I'm sorry. It's one of the best stories. It's one of the most Catholic stories. It's one of the Christian stories because it shows you there's more to this world than what is visible to the mortal eye. It is a pathway. It's a pathway out of the barren Mordor that we have made of our modern industrialized scientific world. But here's the thing. It's a pathway that runs through Elfland. And if you go into Elfland looking for elves, you might, if your heart is good, if your heart is pure, you're going to find angels. But if you're like my friend and your heart is selfish and your heart is proud, you're going to find devils. Okay? So the elvish woods are perilous. They're scary. And I don't think there's any good, clear, easy answer to how to portray magic in stories without luring someone the wrong way.
Well, I suppose, I mean, at the end of the day, you can't stop somebody getting the wrong message from your book.
Yeah.
That's impossible. But you can clearly intend a right message and
right.
hope people hear the right message. I mean, don't glamorize the occult and make it sexy, I suppose is the right term.
Yeah. Don't don't try to make it idiot proof because the idiots are always going to be smarter than you. Okay. But you don't have to write the craft. You don't have to write the craft. You don't have to write charmed. You know. Or if you do, make it clear that those are not human beings, or make it clear that that you can't learn that stuff, or make it clear that they pay a terrible price. You say?
Hmm.
So
No, I agree. Well, that seems like a good place to end. Also, we're at an hour, so
in that case, well, let's shake hands and meet again next week.
thank you everybody for joining us. Like, share, and subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time.